Tonight,
Iran continues to sow discord.
the latest escalation with Iran, this time with the testing of a ballistic missile. And the House-passed budget deal heads to the Senate, leaving fiscal conservatives up in arms. Plus,
that we're trying to unbury ourselves.
More from our exclusive interview with the man behind the Trump administration's policy on immigration. And coffee for felons?
Probably wouldn't hire someone like me either.
The ex-cons brewing up a second chance after life on the lam. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
The economy is starting to show signs of slowing. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup. Well, the U.S. economy still grew at a healthy rate amid a spring slowdown this year. The economic growth at 2.1% comes as higher consumer confidence spending offset decline in investments. Today, in a tweet, the president blamed the Federal Reserve, declaring the diminished results are, quote, not bad, considering we had the very heavy weight of the Federal Reserve Federal Reserve anchor wrapped around our neck. President Trump also added that there's almost no inflation and that, quote, the USA is set to zoom. Well, to keep the economy growing and prevent a meltdown if the government defaulted on its loans, Congress is on the verge of passing a budget deal reached with the White House. But many conservatives are blasting the deal. Senior Washington correspondent Paul Strand joins us now. And Paul, how's the president responding?
Well, John, it's true that the just-passed House bill, now on its way to the Senate, has some conservatives upset. But others, including the president, are saying a better deal just wasn't possible this year.
For all their feuding on other matters, House Democrats and Republicans and the Trump administration have managed to pass a budget deal that puts an end to the era of government shutdowns, at least for 2 years. It heads to the Senate next, where it's expected to pass.
Critics, though, are blasting the deal for what it adds to spending and the deficit. For instance, it goes $320 billion above already agreed-on spending caps. And it adds more than $1.7 trillion to the already massive deficit. Well, those who helped cobble together this budget buster said its critics can talk a good fight, but that's about all.
You're not going to get a better deal. All those people who don't like this deal, they have zero ability to get a better deal.
And President Trump was finding a silver lining in all the extra dollars drenching the Defense Department.
Our military today is more powerful by far than ever before. And 3 years ago, we could not have said that, could we, Mark?
But appearing on Faith Nation, the Heritage Foundation's Romina Bacha scalded these present-day deal makers.
If you look at the deals that President Obama has cut, they were much more fiscally responsible than the deals we've seen from this administration. It is really appalling. Fiscal conservatives are wondering everywhere, why did we even elect Republicans if we're going to get worse deals than we got with Democrats?
Trump forces and some congressional Republicans think a huge fight over the budget could have led to a bruising battle that might have seriously wounded the GOP headed into a crucial election year.
But Bacha suggests these politicians should be ashamed of the damage they're causing taxpayers and future generations.
It's irresponsible, reckless, and frankly immoral to put so much debt on the next generation.
Paul's back here with us. Paul, I know that you've talked to a couple of different budget experts. What were they telling you today?
Well, John, the main guy I talked to was a fellow named Jason Pye at FreedomWorks, and he's a real dyed-in-the-wool conservative, and he was saying basically what we need now is a bunch of new Republicans. He said Republicans are picked every 2 or 6 years on the fact of fiscal restraint and limited government, and he said they just threw that out the door. And so his basic point today was the fact that Republicans need to stand up and fight. And I asked him about this idea of, well, what if President Trump and all these Republicans got booted out in 2020 because there was a whole bad budget battle that might be a real mess?
Sure.
And he said, no, they're there to fight. And if not now, when? We need to stand up and fight.
All right. Paul Strand, thank you for that report.
Sure.
Well, tonight, the Trump administration is deciding how to respond after word that Iran launched a missile test Wednesday. It comes amid rising tensions in the Middle East, where the U.S. is trying to muscle Iran back to the nuclear negotiating table. CBN News national security correspondent Eric Phillips has more on the ramifications of this latest missile launch. Eric?
Well, John, I call it poking the beast. This missile test that Iran did may not have damaged lives or property, but it may have further damaged relations. U.S. military officials say the medium-range missile Iran fired Wednesday did not pose a threat to American or other Western shipping or military bases in the region. The missile traveled nearly 700 miles, staying inside of Iran. Though there were no physical impacts, it did stoke the fires of an already tense situation.
They will pay a price like nobody's ever paid a price.
Newly appointed Secretary of Defense Mark Esper commenting on the regime this week.
Iran continues to sow discord and threaten its neighbors throughout the Middle East.
Erica Henachek echoes that sentiment. She is with Americans for a Free Syria.
Iran's been shipping oil to our adversaries, especially the Assad regime in Syria. They've been sponsoring proxy forces that have been threatening the religious minorities in both Iraq and Syria and beyond, in Lebanon too, and even setting up conversion centers to set up a long-term land bridge that they'll use to move weapons around and to threaten United States allies.
Tension in the region has been building since the nuclear agreement went bad, and it isn't showing any sign of easing up. Well, President Trump's, I should say that in addition to what we're talking about in this case, the situation in Iran is not the only thing that the administration has been dealing with this week. Now, the missile test there came a day before 2 rockets were launched in North Korea, another country where the U.S. is actively trying to negotiate a nuclear deal. John.
Thank you, Eric. Well, President Trump's attacks aren't just reserved for the Squad, Ilhan Omar, or the Progressive Democrats. His list now includes Fox News. Today, he said on Twitter, Fox News is at it again. So different from what they used to be during the 2016 primaries and before. Now, new Fox polls, which have always been terrible to me, have me down to Sleepy Joe. That, of course, is the nickname he's given to former Vice President Joe Biden. The polls show Biden leading the entire field of Democrats and beating President Trump by 10 points. And joining me now is Julia Manchester, political reporter at The Hill and also part of the 2020 campaign team. Julia, thank you again for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
I always look forward to seeing you on Fridays.
Thank you.
Julia, the economy is still humming along. It's one of the stronger storylines for the Trump administration, yet President Trump has a problem trying to stick to this storyline. Instead, he's focused much of his attention on Ilhan Omar, the Squad, and of course, this week, also the Mueller report.
Yeah, it's a little bizarre, I think, if you're a Republican looking in on this, especially if you're a Republican in the House or Senate facing a very uphill re-election battle. They want to be able to tout the economy and the fact that the economy has grown under President Trump, and they have been all along in support of that economic agenda. However, President Trump keeps on going back to Twitter and attacking these progressive congresswomen. I think in President Trump's mind, he's trying to take advantage of the infighting within the Democratic Party. Because if we remember before this feud between Trump and those 4 progressive congresswomen, it was actually the 4 progressive congresswomen, also known as the Squad, right, versus Nancy Pelosi. So he kind of just inserted himself right into the middle of that.
Speaking of that particular controversy, of which the allegations of racism came, Pete Buttigieg today addressing the National Urban League. Of course, he's trying to make inroads with minority voters, but he came right out and said that President Trump is a racist. That word has just been lobbed around to many different people, whether it's President Trump or Ilhan Omar and even the media for its coverage of these stories.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're actually even seeing it on the Democratic side as well. You see Joe Biden next week at the Democratic debate will be sandwiched between Cory Booker and Kamala Harris, 2 candidates of color who have gone after him for his civil rights record. And we've noticed that this week it's gotten pretty ugly between Booker and Biden. So it'll be interesting to see how the discussion of race really goes on in the Democratic primary. But going back to Buttigieg calling President Trump a racist, you know, I think he's trying to really appeal to that part of the party, which is the majority, which really just hates President Trump and wants to see anything but him get reelected. So he's trying to also, I would say, make inroads within the African-American community, in which President Trump is very unpopular with. However, Pete Buttigieg isn't known among the African-American community, really. A CNN poll released earlier this month had him polling at 0% with African-Americans nationally.
Well, you just mentioned Cory Booker. What about the new back and forth between him and Vice President Biden, whom he referred to as the architect of mass incarceration?
You know, I think the back and forth between them really shows how Booker is searching for a breakout moment. You know, I think he looks at someone like Kamala Harris, who was able to easily get that breakout moment when she went after Biden on civil rights. And I think this is Booker trying to get that breakout moment. Now, Booker was actually the first candidate to really go after Biden head on when Biden said he, appreciated his working relationship with two segregationalist senators back in the 70s. We saw Booker really go on a primetime blitz on a couple of networks and really attack Joe Biden. So this is just him revamping that. And I've talked to a couple of Democratic strategists who say that Booker really needs to play this right. He can't have this message of unity and coming together, which is his main campaign message, and still attack Joe Biden. And Joe Biden, who's really avoided going after other Democrats, is trying to balance keeping Democrats unified and being the front runner. So it'll be interesting to see this dynamic between the two. I personally think there's been too much coverage of the Harris-Biden dynamic. I would like to see how this plays out with Booker.
We only have about half a minute left. We haven't talked to you since the Mueller hearing, so I'd love your reaction. And where do things go from here?
Yeah, I don't think it moved the needle really on anything. I mean, I think you're seeing some more Democrats calling for impeachment. I think it was good optics for Democrats in terms of the yes or no answers, but not changing the partisan mood.
Not enough.
Yeah.
Julia Manchester with The Hill, thank you so much for being with us. Always enjoy having you. Well, coming up, more of our exclusive interview with the man behind President Trump's immigration policy.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
A federal court this week ruled against the Trump administration's plan to limit the number of people seeking asylum in the United States. And even as the president vows to fight back, our Jennifer Wishon sat down with one of the most vocal advocates of his border policy, Ken Cuccinelli.
Ken Cuccinelli is the newly appointed acting director of an immigration agency few had ever heard of until he took over. Citizenship and Immigration Services primarily processes applications to live, work, and seek asylum in the U.S., but Cuccinelli is elevating its profile.
I want to talk a little bit about your relationship with President Trump, because you have, in many ways, kind of become the face of his immigration policy.
God help him.
Tell me about that relationship.
The president was pretty emphatic. He wanted to see us educating people and telling them why what we're doing is the right path for America and for Americans, and to clear up, frankly, a lot of the misinformation that had been out there for a long time.
As the president moves to make immigration the centerpiece of his election strategy, Cuccinelli's stock is only expected to rise. The former Attorney General of Virginia, he's a staunch conservative who has long advocated the federal government get tough at the border, but not without compassion, as he recalls seeing this photo.
I have a grandson that age, and I have 7 kids of my own. Who isn't moved by that? But then it causes us to ask the question, why did this happen? And there are two basic answers to that. On a personal level, this father made a decision. He made a decision that in this country would be child neglect. And it cost both him and his daughter their lives. And, you know, that's something to be very sad about. At a higher level, we ask, well, what brought him to make that decision? And what brought him to make that decision is in large part these massive loopholes that stand out there as an attraction to people outside our country to try to come through.
His agency has a backlog of 300,000 asylum requests.
We are so swamped.
And the Department of Justice is wading through some 500,000 more.
We're trying to unbury ourselves systematically so we can let the good ones in. And by good ones, I just mean people who have traditional asylum claims, who have persecution for religious reasons or political reasons. And
Cuccinelli is also part of the team advising the president on the number of refugees the U.S. should take in the coming year. This as the global persecution of Christians and other religious minorities grows at an alarming rate, and refugee requests are likely to increase.
Some of the president's advisors are suggesting that in the next fiscal year, the U.S. accept no refugees or perhaps drastically lower number.
No one should mistake the debate about refugee numbers for a conclusion about where the Trump administration is on humanitarian care for those coming to our country or asking to come to our country.
Do you feel that God has placed you here for such a time as this?
Well, I think God has his plans for all of us. And, you know, if you'd asked me a year ago, did I expect to be here, the answer surely would have been no. But God has his own plans. I'm proud to be here. I'm glad the president asked me to come help.
Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, Washington.
Coming up, the coffee shop brewing up second chances for ex-cons. That story when we come back.
Give me that. Bye. Sure, life is busy, but I found a way to make a huge difference in people's lives. I guess you could say I'm changing the world right here from home. I bring medical supplies and doctors to people in need, and dig wells so that villagers can have clean and safe water to drink. I make it possible to preach the gospel in over 100 countries, including right here in America. And when disaster strikes, I'm there, providing food, thank you, and emergency supplies to give people hope again. Every day, CBN and I are making the world a better place. Here you go. My life is hectic, so I joined CBN through Pledge Express. My bank does all the work, and I know that my gift is being used where it's needed most. So become a CBN partner and join Pledge Express, because you can do a world of good right from where you are. Hi, good morning. Are you ready to get started?
Hey, if you're tired and exhausted all day, you can't think clearly, and you really just need a cup or even a pot of coffee to get through your day, then join me, Dr. Josh Axe, for this new series where I'm going to teach you how to transform your diet and use essential oils and supplements to get a better night's sleep.
Get Protect Your Sleep and live your best life with innovative information from 5 leading sleep experts.
If you're not a great sleeper, you can do things to make yourself a great sleeper. If you're already a pretty good sleeper, you can enhance your sleep and be even better.
Discover a sleep-enhancing bedtime routine, how to put insomnia to rest, learn how to relieve pain that disturbs sleep, and much more in Protect Your Sleep.
Everything you do better with a good night's sleep.
Wake up to your best life. Call 1-800-700-7000 to get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Don't miss out on this brand new series.
Well, welcome back. Former inmates are getting a second chance in Florida. Today, Vice President Mike Pence and White House advisor Ivanka Trump took part in a roundtable at Operation New Hope in Jacksonville, where reformed felons receive on-the-job training for a shot at a new life. The vice president took the opportunity to highlight the administration's role in passing the First Step Act, focusing on prison reform.
The president led the way to pass what had come to be known as the First Step Act. And on the federal level, Governor, it now is creating new pathways for educational coursework, vocational training, faith-based programs in our federal prison system, and it's been supported broadly by law enforcement across this country.
And supporters of prison reform often highlight the difficulty people have finding work after leaving prison. Statistics show 1 in 3 adults can't get a job because they have a criminal record. And even when they do get work, it rarely matches their skills and interests. As Heather Sells shows us, that's what drove a Chicago software engineer to create a coffee company helping former felons.
Pete Leonard first developed a love for fresh roasted coffee during a missions trip to Brazil. After returning home, he made his own roaster in his Weber grill. Around the same time, he noticed a relative out of prison and unable to find work.
And I watched what happened to him from getting out of the prison system and then trying to get back into normal society, and it was virtually impossible.
And Leonard's loved one isn't the only one facing this uphill battle. More than 70 million Americans have a criminal background, and Dr. Karen Swanson, who leads the Institute of Prison Ministries at Wheaton College, finds most employers simply don't want to hire them.
If they check the box that asks if they have a felony record or criminal record, then many employers just throw the application out.
Pete Leonard's solution: take advantage of America's love for coffee by creating a coffee roasting company and hire former felons to run it.
We choose coffee rated in the top 1% from a quality standpoint, and we employ people who have a felony conviction on their record to do all of the work.
It's a match made in coffee heaven. U.S. prisons release more than 500,000 people each year, and at the same time, Americans are drinking 400 million cups of coffee a day, driving specialty sales up 20%. One of Leonard's early hires, Louis Dooley, left prison after serving time for armed robbery and attempted murder.
It was scary, it was difficult, and I just wanted to go back in because I didn't know how to cope. I didn't know how to live out here. I couldn't find a job. That was the biggest thing.
Louis became a believer and worked hard to turn his life around while behind bars. Still, no employer would take a chance.
Once I explained the nature of my offense, they were just like, we can't hire you. So I understood. I probably wouldn't hire someone like me either. No work experience, 35 years old. I got robberies, attempted murder. In my background, I'm not the ideal or model employee that you want to have.
Amy ran into similar dead ends. In addition to a banking resume, her paperwork included a white-collar crime conviction. Neither applicant could get past a small box. It's on most applications and must be checked for a criminal record or conviction.
Companies say that they hire, people with records, etc. But no, it's been filled. You just don't even get an interview. You don't even get in the door.
But at I Have a Bean, both Amy and Louis got in the door.
We all make mistakes. Some of us go to prison for them. Others of us should have gone to prison, didn't. And others just skate by. The fact is, it really puts us all in the category of sinners. So we're not concerned with what you did then. What we're concerned with is, who are you today?
Not every hire is out of prison, but in the past 9 years, Leonard has hired 35 people with a background. And today, all but 2 are the success stories he believed could happen. This positive result is no accident. Leonard carefully vets each employee. He finds out if they've worked to rebuild their lives while behind bars and whether they've stuck to that path after leaving. He's also a stickler for quality.
I want our employees to be understanding that the reason we're able to pay them a salary is because they produce great product, not because we've guilted somebody in the public to donating money to us because we have a great mission.
Leonard is more than a boss, he's a witness, watching his employees transform from down and out to confident and marketable. Today, Louis oversees a ministry for inmates, and Amy manages the front office for I Have a Bean. Dr. Swanson believes this concept could become a game changer for millions who need a second chance.
This is a great opportunity for the church and the Christian community to help formerly incarcerated people to become entrepreneurs or to hire them.
That experience can lead not just to increased marketability, but to a shot at restoration and a new productive life. Reporting in Wheaton, Illinois, Heather Sells, CBN News.
Great story. Well, when we come back, the controversy over double-headed eagle, golf clubs, and the presidential seal.
We will move the American embassy to the eternal capital of the Jewish people, Jerusalem.
As the nations rage, you can stand with Israel.
History is being written, and I want to be a part of it.
Call 1-800-700-7000 and get to life.
This is our nature as a country.
Discover the untold story of how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
We consider it our duty to reach out and help others around the world.
For a gift of $10 or more, you can own the acclaimed CBN documentary To Life.
To treat a human, no matter what he is, which religious he has, which color he is, this is what I'm doing.
Support Israel in their time of need. Get to Life, now available on DVD. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
And I wish that other people throughout the world could see this side of Israel.
Orphans Promise is committed to loving and serving at-risk children, to helping keep families together, and to creating opportunities for strong and sustainable communities around the world. We're working in over 60 countries around the world, and with your help, we can do even more. There's an old African proverb I love that says, if you want to run fast, run alone. But if you want to run far, run together. At Orphans Promise, we want to run far so we can touch the lives of as many orphaned and vulnerable children as possible. But we don't want to go alone. We're out to change the world, one child, one family, one community at a time. Will you join us?
Well, blame Google. That's the official response from the conservative group who put up a doctored presidential seal behind the president at an event earlier this week. Turning Point USA says there was, quote, zero malicious intent behind a fake presidential seal appearing for about 80 seconds on screen Tuesday behind the president. Instead of an American eagle, the seal sported a two-headed bird like the one seen on the state seal of the Russian Federation. And instead of a quiver of arrows and an olive branch, the talons grasp a set of golf clubs and a wad of cash. The Latin motto, E pluribus unum, replaced with a Spanish phrase translated into English, 45 is a puppet. TPUSA says the employee responsible for the mishap has been fired. Well, thanks for joining us for this edition of Faith Nation. We hope you have a great weekend.